On Christmas Eve, I stand in my parents' kitchen, my hands trembling as I arrange rosemary sprigs around the perfectly roasted turkey. The chandelier light glints off the silver serving tray, reflecting my flushed face back at me. From the dining room, my mother's voice carries honey sweet as she introduces my younger sister to someone important. "This is our Melissa, the family's pride and joy," Evelyn Hale announces, her tone brimming with maternal adoration. She's handling public relations for Bloomfield Industries now. A senior position, you know, only 29, and already making waves in corporate America. Appreciative murmurs come from the guests. I recognize the voice of Senator Williams among them. Another Christmas Eve surrounded by Connecticut's elite while I slave away in the kitchen. "And your other daughter?" someone asks. A brief pause follows. "Christine is around somewhere," my mother says dismissively. "She's quite handy in the kitchen." My stomach knots. After 15 years of building Aurora Events from nothing into a multi-million-dollar luxury event company, to my mother, I remain just the helpful daughter who can be counted on to prepare the family meals. The turkey platter grows heavier in my hands. I straighten my shoulders and push through the swinging door into the dining room. As I enter, the conversation halts, 12 pairs of eyes turning toward me, or rather, toward the masterpiece I've spent 8 hours preparing. "Here she is now," my mother says, her smile tight. As I place the turkey at the center of the table, surrounded by Waterford crystal, Wedgwood china, and sterling silver flatware, all gleaming under the antique chandelier, she adds with a brittle laugh, "At least Christine is useful for something." The room tilts slightly. My cheeks burn as Senator Williams' wife offers a sympathetic smile. I'm 33 years old, responsible for coordinating presidential fundraisers and celebrity weddings. Yet here I stand, serving others as though I were staff rather than family. "The cranberry sauce is my grandmother's recipe," I manage to say, my voice steadier than I feel. My mother waves her hand dismissively. Christine always did have a knack for following instructions. I retreat to the kitchen, leaning against the marble counter. The realization sits in my chest like a stone. After 15 years, I'm still just the kitchen help. 15 years. I whisper to myself, disbelieving. Nothing has changed. I remember my first Christmas dinner for the family at 18 years old, desperately trying to please them after my acceptance to culinary school instead of the Ivy League path my parents had mapped out. While Melissa unwrapped cashmere sweaters and diamond earrings, I stood in this same kitchen, terrified of disappointing them with my cooking. Just yesterday, Elizabeth had praised my business acumen after I negotiated the Horizon Resorts contract, a $2.5 million deal that would elevate Aurora Events to national recognition. "You're a strategic genius, Christine," she'd said, her eyes shining with genuine admiration. "They never saw you coming." The kitchen door swings open and my mother appears, her silver-streaked hair perfectly coiffed, her crimson dress tailored to hide the effects of time. "The senator is waiting for dessert," she says, checking her pearl watch. "What's taking so long?" I look at the lineup of pies and trifles I'd prepared before dawn. Something shifts inside me. A small, quiet rebellion. "I need a moment," I say, removing my apron. Evelyn's eyes narrow. "Don't be dramatic, Christine. This is what you're good at." My father appears in the doorway behind her, his tall frame slightly stooped now, his expression uncomfortable but silent. Richard Hale, once a formidable businessman, now retired and unwilling to contradict his wife of 38 years. "Is there a problem?" he asks, voice low. "Christine is having one of her moments," my mother says. "I'm not having a moment," I reply quietly. "I'm recognizing a pattern." My father shifts uneasily. Outside the kitchen window, snowflakes drift down onto the manicured landscape of their Connecticut estate. The same estate purchased with money from the business my father sold. The business he never thought to share with me despite my degree in business administration. My mother gestures impatiently toward the desserts. "The Hendersons and the Williamsons are waiting. Do you have any idea how important tonight is for your sister's connections?" The implication hangs in the air between us. My success doesn't matter. My connections don't. Only Melissa's matter. "I'll bring them out," I say, picking up the first tray. My mother nods curtly and leaves. My father lingers a moment longer, opens his mouth as if to speak, then follows her without a word. In the dining room, I serve each guest personally, smiling professionally. The same smile I use at events where billionaires treat me with more respect than my own family does. At the far end of the table, Melissa holds court, her blonde hair catching the light, her laughter musical as she entertains Senator Williams with some anecdote about her latest PR triumph. My phone vibrates in my pocket just as I serve the last slice of chocolate truffle tart. I check it discreetly. Elizabeth. Emergency at the office. Horizon contract issue. Need you as soon as possible. I read the message twice. Elizabeth knows there's no emergency. This is our prearranged signal. Her offering me an escape route from family obligations that become too much. I face a choice. Maintain the peace or assert my dignity. The faces around the table blur slightly as I make my decision. I have to go, I announce, removing the serving napkin from my arm. Business emergency. My mother's expression hardens. On Christmas Eve? Surely whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. It's the Horizon contract, I say. And for the first time tonight, I see a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She's heard of Horizon Resorts, even if she pretends not to follow my career. Christine runs some sort of catering business, she explains to Senator Williams, her voice dripping with condescension. Event planning, actually, I correct her. We're coordinating Horizon's national brand relaunch. The senator raises his eyebrows, impressed. The Horizon deal? That's a major contract. My mother's smile freezes. Melissa's eyes dart between us, suddenly alert. I really must go, I say, gathering my coat and purse from the kitchen. Outside, Elizabeth's car idles in the circular driveway, snow gathering on its windshield. Her concerned eyes meet mine as I slide into the passenger seat. Same as last year, she asks gently. Worse, I reply. They know exactly what I do for a living. They just choose not to acknowledge it. As the car pulls away, I watch the warm glow of the family home recede in the side mirror. The realization crystallizes within me, turning from hurt to resolution. This is the last holiday I will spend as their servant, I say, my voice quiet but firm. Elizabeth nods, her hand steady on the wheel as we leave Connecticut behind, heading back toward my real life, the one I built without their approval or acknowledgement. The heavy oak doors of the Willowbrook Country Club swung shut behind me, muffling the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. The scent of lemon polish and old money was the same, but the woman breathing it in was not. 3 days after fleeing my parents' Christmas dinner, I was back on their turf, but this time I was the hunter. Elizabeth's plan had been simple. Retrieve the business portfolio I'd accidentally left in my father's study during a rare visit. They'll be at the club board meeting, she'd assured me. In and out, no confrontation. But a familiar musical laugh from the small reading room to my left froze me mid-step. The contract signing is next week, so your timing couldn't be better. My mother's voice, hushed but clear, slithered through the partially open door. Christine has no idea we know about the Horizon deal. I edged closer, my back pressing against the wall, my breath turning shallow. The Williamsons are on the Horizon board, Melissa continued. Their daughter works in legal. She confirmed it's worth over $2 million. My father cleared his throat. Keep your voice down, Melissa. No one's here on a Wednesday afternoon, Dad, she replied dismissively. Besides, who would care about Christine's little catering business? Event planning, my mother corrected her, her tone sharp. Which is why this Horizon situation is becoming problematic. The Williamsons mentioned Christine by name at the Christmas party. Before we could redirect the conversation, the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Months. She'd said months. I've been calling her vendors for months, Melissa confirmed, a smugness in her voice, dropping hints about financial instability. Most were receptive, especially after I mentioned my PR expertise. A rustle of papers. This file has everything. Financial reports, client list, vendor relationships. Christine's surprisingly good at business for someone who couldn't get into Yale. My father's voice held a thread of reluctant admiration. Good enough to embarrass this family if she continues to succeed, my mother added sharply. What happens when the Thompsons discover our daughter, the one who cooks Christmas dinner, is making more than their son at Goldman Sachs? I've planted seeds with 3 Horizon executives, Melissa said. Just enough concern about Aurora's capacity to handle their national relaunch. One mentioned they might need to revisit certain aspects of the proposal. Is that wise? My father asked. If she traces it back to us. Richard, please. My mother's voice dripped with contempt. Christine still craves our approval too much to see what's in front of her face. She spent 15 years thinking we simply don't understand her business. The girl makes dessert for senators while serving them herself. The truth crystallized in my mind with terrible, ice-cold clarity. They knew. They had always known. The dismissals, the belittling, the kitchen servitude. None of it was ignorance. It was a strategy. A calculated, sustained campaign of sabotage. I slipped away before they emerged, ducking into an alcove. My mind raced, reassembling 15 years of history. Melissa's friendly visits to my office, always around contract announcements. The strange pattern of clients backing out after family gatherings. The health inspector before the governor's fundraiser. It was all connected. For 15 years, I'd been fighting with one hand tied behind my back, believing my greatest vulnerability was my own insecurity. The real vulnerability was my family. And now they were targeting Horizon, the contract that would elevate Aurora to national prominence. My phone vibrated. Elizabeth. Everything okay? A strange calm settled over me. The hurt daughter wanted to burst in and scream. But the CEO saw a more significant truth. They wouldn't be doing this if they weren't terrified of my success. I typed a quick reply. Meet me at the office. Emergency strategy meeting. 20 minutes later, I strode into Aurora's conference room. Elizabeth waited, concern etched on her face. They know everything. I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. Melissa has been sabotaging Aurora for years with my parents' full knowledge and support. Elizabeth's expression didn't register surprise. She opened her laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Family Incidents. I've been documenting patterns for months, she confessed. Strange coincidences after your family gatherings. Clients with sudden concerns. She turned the screen toward me. The sabotage always intensifies when we're close to a major breakthrough. Like Horizon. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. Would you have believed me? Her eyes were kind. You needed to see it yourself. The door opened and James Wilson, my 61-year-old CFO, entered. I ran the numbers you asked for, he said to Elizabeth, then noticed my expression. You told her. She found out herself. James placed a spreadsheet before me. Client cancellations and vendor issues, mapped against my family interactions. The correlation was statistically significant. A damning graph of betrayal. Your mother needs Melissa to be the successful daughter, Elizabeth said gently. And your father's retirement investments haven't performed as expected. That's not an excuse, I interrupted, a hard edge in my voice. No, James agreed. But understanding their motivation helps us anticipate their next move. They're desperate. Your success threatens Melissa's standing. The bigger Aurora gets, the smaller she looks. I walked to the window, staring at the Manhattan skyline. The empire I'd built. Behind me, my true allies waited silently. Document everything, I said finally, turning back to face them. Every canceled contract, every complaint, every suspicious timing. We're not just defending the Horizon deal now. Something new hardened within me. We're protecting Aurora events from the people who should have been protecting me. The calm I felt was not peaceful but surgical. It was the quiet of a battlefield after the first shot has been fired, when the shock subsides and training takes over. The emergency strategy meeting stretched into the night, the conference room walls papered with timelines, financials, and vendor logs. We were no longer just an event planning company. We were a command center preparing for a siege. They'll go after our credibility with Horizon directly, James stated, pointing a pen at the calendar. The final review is in 72 hours. They'll want to strike hard and fast, to create enough doubt to derail the signing. Elizabeth nodded, pulling up a list on her tablet. I've already reached out to our most loyal clients. The Vanderbilts, the Richardsons, they're prepared to vouch for us on a moment's notice. But we need to be proactive. We can't just wait for the attack. I studied the graph James had made. The red spikes of sabotage following family events like a sinister heartbeat. They've always relied on my silence, I said, more to myself than to them. They count on me being too ashamed, or too desperate for their approval, to ever call them out. That's their real vulnerability. What are you thinking? Elizabeth asked, her eyes narrowing with strategic interest. I'm thinking it's time for a lunch reservation, I said, reaching for my phone. Somewhere public. Somewhere with witnesses. The maitre d' at Bellini's recognized me immediately. Your usual table, Miss Hale? The one with the garden view. Actually, Anthony, I said, my voice smooth as glass, I'd prefer something more central today, near the windows facing Main Street. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he nodded. Of course. I arranged my evidence neatly beside my water glass. The health inspector's report, the vendor transcripts, the damning timeline. A public execution required proper staging. Melissa swept in at 12:15, 5 minutes late as always, a vision in a cream-colored suit and pearl earrings. She air-kissed my cheek. You look tired, Christine. Those big events must be so exhausting. They are, I smiled thinly. Especially when someone calls health inspectors to our kitchen the day before a major wedding. Her fingers paused on the menu. The flicker of panic in her eyes was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. What are you talking about? I slid the inspector's report toward her. They mentioned who called them. It was you. The bustling restaurant continued around us, but at our table the silence was absolute. You're being ridiculous, she said, pushing the paper away without looking. Am I? I placed another document before her. Here's a pattern of anonymous complaints, all filed within 48 hours of family gatherings where I mentioned upcoming events. Her cheeks flushed. I don't have time for this. Make time. My voice was controlled, measured. I also have recordings of you contacting our vendors, pretending to work for Aurora Events. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, assessing the nearby diners. Then relief washed over her face. Mother's here. Evelyn Hale approached, elegant in tailored burgundy, her smile faltering as she took in the scattered papers. What's all this? Evidence, I replied calmly, of systematic sabotage against my company. Her face hardened. That's a serious accusation, Christine. Backed by serious proof. I turned the health inspector's report toward her. The inspector confirmed it was Melissa. We were concerned about your standards, Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. After hearing about that unfortunate food poisoning incident at the M sizes. There was no food poisoning incident, I leaned forward. That was a rumor Melissa started. We've never had a single case of food poisoning. A waiter approached. Evelyn waved him away with practiced charm before turning back to me. Her eyes flint hard. You've always been so dramatic, Christine. We're simply looking out for the family reputation. You weren't concerned, I countered, my voice steady. You were sabotaging my business. Melissa shifted uncomfortably as a couple at the next table glanced our way. For the first time, she was the one on the defensive. I was protecting our family name, she hissed. Your little catering business reflects on all of us. What you fabricated about my business, I corrected her. Aurora Events has perfect health scores. Evelyn placed a restraining hand on Melissa's arm. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, the word was sharp, final. We've had 33 years of privacy. Now we're doing public. Melissa's facade cracked. Fine. I called the health inspector. I was concerned. The Hendersons who interviewed with your PR firm last month? I pushed a printout toward her. The same Hendersons who mysteriously canceled their contract with Aurora a week later? Evelyn's grip on her purse tightened. I could see her calculating the social cost. What do you want, Christine? I want you to stop interfering with my business. Both of you. No more calls to vendors. No more rumors. No more health inspectors. Melissa's jaw tightened. And if we don't? Then the next conversation happens with lawyers present, I replied, gathering my evidence, and includes the district attorney's office. I stood, dropping enough cash on the table to cover all 3 lunches. I've worked too hard for too long to let anyone, even family, destroy what I've built. Outside, Elizabeth waited in the company car. As I slid into the passenger seat, my phone buzzed. It was James. Contract review meeting with Horizon just wrapped, he reported. Everything's proceeding as planned. Not a single question about our operational standards. Did you tell them? Elizabeth asked, nodding toward the restaurant. Everything, I confirmed, watching my mother and sister through the window, their heads bent together in urgent conversation. They know I know. As Elizabeth pulled away, Anthony, the restaurant's owner, hurried out. Miss Hale, he called. Elizabeth slowed as he approached my window. We're hosting the Chamber of Commerce dinner next month. Would Aurora Events be available to handle it? The invitation, extended in full view of the restaurant windows, felt like more than a business opportunity. It was validation. We'd be honored, I replied, a genuine smile finally spreading across my face. As we drove toward the office, the restaurant receded in the side mirror. The battle wasn't over, but a critical line had been crossed. For the first time, I had confronted them not as a pleading daughter, but as a formidable equal. And for once, I wasn't the one left explaining. The victory at the Horizon boardroom was not an explosion of confetti and cheers, but a deep, resonant shift in the foundation of my life. In the weeks that followed, the silence from my family was louder than any argument. There were no calls, no carefully worded emails, no attempts at a false reconciliation. It was the quiet of a retreating army, licking its wounds. And I found I preferred it to the constant, low-grade warfare of family dinners. The industry, however, was anything but silent. The story, of course, had leaked. Not the ugly, personal details, but the essential truth. Aurora Events had faced down a malicious, last-minute challenge to its integrity, and had not only emerged victorious, but had secured an expanded, exclusive partnership with a global giant. The business journals called it a masterclass in corporate resilience. My phone began to ring with offers and inquiries, not just for event planning, but for speaking engagements on crisis management. It was during one of these calls from the editor of a prominent business magazine that the idea first took root. I was recounting in broad strokes the importance of having a team that believes in your vision. It's a shame, the editor mused, how often the greatest obstacles for female entrepreneurs aren't in the market, but at their own kitchen tables. The phrase stuck with me. The kitchen table. The very sight of my years of servitude and dismissal. I looked around my bright, modern office at the skyline I had earned, and thought of all the other women standing at their own metaphorical kitchen tables, their ambitions being politely, or not so politely, dismissed by those who should support them most. Elizabeth, I said one afternoon, calling her into my office, I don't want to just give speeches about resilience. I want to fund it. She listened, her head tilted as I laid out the idea. The Aurora Foundation, a grant and mentorship program specifically for women entrepreneurs whose families failed to see their vision. We'll provide seed funding, I explained, my excitement growing. But more than that, we'll provide the strategic guidance and the unwavering belief that they aren't getting at home. We'll be the board of directors their families refused to be. Elizabeth's eyes shone. It's perfect. It turns your history into their leverage. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of purposeful activity. The Horizon contract propelled Aurora to new heights, and we channeled that momentum into building the foundation. James, now a permanent CFO with profit sharing, set up a separate endowment with his characteristic financial rigor. Elizabeth, embracing her new role as Chief Operations Officer, built the mentorship framework. The inaugural Aurora Foundation Gala was held at the Waldorf Astoria. As I stood backstage listening to the murmur of hundreds of guests, I felt no nerves, only a profound sense of rightness. The award in my hand, Business Leader of the Year, was not just for me. It was a weapon to break down doors for others. The spotlight was warm as I stepped to the podium. Success requires both talent and boundaries. I began, my voice clear and carrying. The Aurora Foundation exists to support women whose families see their ambition as a problem to be managed, rather than a gift to be nurtured. From the podium, I could see Elizabeth and James at the front table, beaming with pride. And then near the entrance I saw them, my parents and Melissa, standing awkwardly in formal wear, holding the embossed invitations I had sent as a final, unflinching act of courtesy. I had never expected them to come. I finished my speech to thunderous applause. As I stepped down, Elizabeth handed me a glass of champagne. To boundaries, she whispered. And to the family we choose, I replied. the words feeling more true than any I had ever spoken to my blood relatives. Later, as I circulated, they approached. My mother looked older, her carefully applied makeup unable to conceal a new uncertainty around her eyes. "Christine," she said, her voice tentative. The speech was impactful. "Thank you for coming," I replied, my tone professionally cordial. "The silent auction ends at 10. I hope you'll bid generously." My father cleared his throat. "The Miami expansion? That's significant." "The Horizon contract opened many doors," I said neutrally. Melissa simply studied me, her expression unreadable. There was no malice left in it, only a kind of stunned reassessment. I excused myself to greet the mayor, leaving them standing there, adrift in a room full of people who respected me. The true highlight of the evening came when a young woman named Samantha approached me, her eyes wide. She was our foundation's first grant recipient, a brilliant floral designer whose father insisted she become an accountant. "Your story, it's my story," she stammered. "Thank you. Just thank you." I squeezed her hand. "Trust your instincts, Samantha. And remember, respect isn't just earned through success. It's required through boundaries." At the end of the night, as the last guests departed, Elizabeth handed me the Foundation's first annual report. I flipped through the pages, looking at the faces of the women we were already helping. A bakery, a design studio, an event planning agency in Boston. "When family shows you who they are, believe them," I said quietly, "and then build the life you deserve." Elizabeth smiled. "That should be on the Foundation's letterhead." As we gathered our things, my father approached alone. "Your grandmother would be proud," he said awkwardly. "She always believed in your cooking." I looked at him, this man who had chosen silence over support for nearly 4 decades. "She taught me more than recipes," I replied. "She taught me that talent deserves respect." He nodded once, a silent concession, and turned away. Outside, a light snow was falling on the city. Elizabeth linked her arm through mine as we walked to the waiting car. "Next year's gala will be even bigger, with even more success stories to celebrate," I said. The city lights twinkled through the gentle flurry, and for the first time in my life, the approach of Christmas held no dread, only a quiet, powerful sense of possibility. The ghost of the kitchen had been banished, replaced by the bright, steady light of the stage. I was no longer just Christine Hale, daughter. I was Christine Hale, founder, CEO, and philanthropist. And the story was just beginning. The success of the Aurora Foundation Gala did not simply fade into the background, it became a new cornerstone of my life. The calls and emails that flooded our office were no longer just about booking events, but about partnership, mentorship, and investment. I had transitioned from business owner to industry leader, and the weight of it was both daunting and invigorating. One evening, about a month after the gala, I was working late in my office. The city lights glittered below, a tapestry of ambition and dreams not so different from my own. My phone buzzed, breaking the quiet. It was a number I hadn't seen in weeks, my father's. A part of me expected another round of manipulation, a guilt-laden plea or a veiled threat. But his voice, when I answered, was stripped of its usual authority. It was just tired. "Christine," he began, then paused. "Are you free to talk?" "I'm listening, Dad. It's about the business. The one I sold." He took a deep breath. "The estate lawyers are finalizing some tax documents. They need your signature. For the trust." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. The trust had always been Melissa's domain, the financial engine that funded her lifestyle and my parents' retirement. My name had never been on anything. My signature? Why? There was another long pause. The terms of the sale. There were clauses, performance-based allocations for descendants. Your mother and I. We interpreted them narrowly. He was struggling to find the right words that wouldn't be an admission of guilt. "Given your success, the lawyers insist your inclusion is not just advisable but legally mandatory. It seems your achievements have triggered a fiduciary duty." The irony was so profound it was almost laughable. For 15 years my success had been dismissed. Now it was legally significant enough to force them to share what was always rightfully partly mine. They hadn't had a change of heart. They'd been backed into a corner by their own financial agreements. "I see," I said, my voice neutral. Have your lawyer send the documents to James Wilson, my CFO. He'll review them. Christine, there's no need for. There's every need, I interrupted, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. This is no longer a family matter, Dad. It's a business one. James will handle it. The silence on the other end was a palpable thing. I had just reframed our entire relationship. I was no longer a daughter asking for her due. I was a CEO engaging with a third party. Very well, he said, the words soft with defeat. I'll have them sent. When the thick envelope arrived, James spent 2 days poring over the documents. He finally came into my office, a faint smile on his face. It's substantial, Christine. The back allocations alone are significant. They've been diverting funds that, by the strict letter of this agreement, should have been yours for years. Don't fight them on the past, I said, looking out at the city. Negotiate a clean, fair settlement going forward. I don't want their guilt money. I want what the contract stipulates. And I want it managed through Aurora's financial channels. James nodded, understanding perfectly. I was bringing the family wealth into my world on my terms, subject to my business's scrutiny and control. It was the ultimate reversal. The final settlement was transferred quietly. There was no dramatic meeting, no signed apology. The money appeared in the Aurora Foundation's endowment account, accompanied by a sterile letter from my father's lawyers. I used the first distribution to fund 3 full scholarships for women entering culinary school. A nod to the path my parents had so despised. A few weeks later, I received a handwritten note on heavy, familiar stationery. It was from my mother. Christine, I saw the press about the culinary scholarships. A generous gesture. I trust you are well. Evelyn. It wasn't an apology. It was a white flag. An acknowledgement that the war was over and she had lost. I didn't frame the note or throw it away. I simply filed it, another piece of business correspondence. The true closure came on a bright spring morning. I was walking through the new Aurora Events headquarters, a sprawling light-filled loft space we'd acquired to accommodate our expanded team. I passed the test kitchen, where a young chef was experimenting with canapés for the Horizon Resort's summer launch. I passed the design studio, where a team was mapping out a stunning venue layout for a tech billionaire's wedding. I stopped at the wall of framed photos near the reception area. There were pictures of the presidential fundraiser, the celebrity wedding, the Horizon contract signing. And there in the center was a new addition. A photo from the Aurora Foundation Gala. I was on stage accepting the award, with Elizabeth and James applauding in the foreground. My face was calm, confident, and utterly my own. Elizabeth came to stand beside me. It's a good picture, she said. It's a true one, I replied. I thought of the woman I had been a year ago, her hands trembling under the weight of a silver platter, her spirit crushed by a dismissive comment. That woman felt like a character from a story I had once read. A story whose ending I now had the power to rewrite every single day. The journey hadn't been about defeating my family. It had been about building something they could never touch. My validation didn't come from their belated acknowledgement or their legally mandated settlement. It came from the hum of a thriving office, the gratitude of the women the foundation supported, and the quiet respect of the 2 people who had stood by me not out of obligation, but out of shared belief. I turned to Elizabeth. What's next on the agenda? She smiled. The final walkthrough for the Miami office. Then lunch with Samantha, our first grant recipient. She secured her first major corporate client. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. The past was a closed book. The future for the first time was simply a blank page waiting for me to fill it. And I knew without a doubt that whatever I chose to write, it would be on my own terms. The Miami sun was a different kind of spotlight. It wasn't the warm, formal glow of the Waldorf chandeliers, but a brilliant, unforgiving blaze that reflected off the turquoise water of Biscayne Bay. I stood on the terrace of the new Aurora Events Miami office, the salt-kissed breeze tugging at the hem of my linen blazer. Below, the city pulsed with a rhythm entirely its own. The walkthrough had been a triumph. The space was airy, modern, and perfectly positioned to serve our new clientele of international resorts and luxury brands. The local team Elizabeth had hired was sharp, ambitious, and utterly uninterested in where I went to college or who my family was. Their respect was earned through the reputation of Aurora, and that was the only currency that mattered here. Penny for your thoughts? Elizabeth asked, joining me at the railing. She held 2 glasses of iced tea, condensation already beating on the sides. I was just thinking how quiet it is, I said, accepting the glass. She laughed. Quiet? Christine, it's Miami. The traffic alone. No, I clarified, taking a sip of the sweet, cold tea. Not that kind of quiet. The noise in my head. It's gone. I didn't need to elaborate. She understood. The constant, low-frequency hum of anxiety, the need to prove myself, the anticipation of the next sabotage, the ache of familial rejection, had simply vanished. It had been replaced by the productive buzz of a growing enterprise and the profound quiet of self-possession. Lunch with Samantha, our first foundation grant recipient, was held at a vibrant cafe in Wynwood. The walls were covered in murals that exploded with color, a fitting backdrop for the young woman who greeted us with a confident handshake. The nervous floral designer I'd met at the gala was gone. In her place was a business owner, her eyes bright with the thrill of her first major contract. I used your advice, she said after we'd ordered, about boundaries. When my dad said I should just be happy with the corporate retainer, I told him this was just the beginning. And I meant it. The pride I felt was cleaner and sharper than any business success. This was a legacy that wouldn't show up on a balance sheet, but was infinitely more valuable. My phone buzzed on the table. The screen showed a number from Connecticut. Not my parents. Not Melissa. It was the Willowbrook Country Club. I felt a flicker of the old tension, a ghost of a reflex. Then it passed. I silenced the phone and placed it face down on the table. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Willowbrook, I said simply. She nodded. Let it go to voicemail. I did. And as I turned my full attention back to Samantha, listening to her excited plans for her growing studio, the last vestige of that old life dissolved in the Miami heat. The club, the social standings, the whispered judgments, it was all background noise from a channel I no longer listened to. Later that evening, as I packed for the flight back to New York, the voicemail notification popped up. Curiosity more than anything made me listen. Miss Hale, this is Robert Higgins, General Manager at Willowbrook. I'm calling to personally invite you to be our guest of honor at the Summer Solstice Gala next month. Given Aurora Events' esteemed reputation, we can think of no one better to oversee the event's planning. We do hope you'll consider it. The message ended. I played it again, not with bitterness, but with a detached sense of irony. The ultimate symbol of my exclusion was now courting my endorsement. They weren't inviting Christine, the daughter. They were inviting Aurora Events, the brand. I didn't call back immediately. I finished packing, ordered room service, and watched the sun set over the bay. The sky turned from brilliant blue to a palette of fiery oranges and deep purples. I thought about the gala. I thought about walking into that room, not as staff, not as a dismissed relative, but as the guest of honor. And I realized I didn't want to. The victory wouldn't be in going back and claiming a throne I never wanted. The victory was in having the power to decline. The victory was in my Miami office and my foundation and my team in Manhattan. The victory was in the quiet certainty that my worth was no longer tied to any room I was or wasn't in. The next morning, I drafted a polite professional email from 30,000 feet. I thanked Mr. Higgins for the generous offer, but explained that Aurora's commitments, particularly our new expansion, made it impossible to take on the project. I wished him the best in finding a suitable planner and suggested a few other excellent firms, none of which were owned by my family. I hit send as the plane broke through the clouds. There was no dramatic weight lifted because the weight had been gone for some time. It was just another business decision. When I landed in New York, there was a text from my father. It was a photo, slightly blurry, of my grandmother's handwritten recipe for cranberry sauce. Beneath it he had written, "Found this going through some old things. Thought you might like to have it." It wasn't an apology. It was an artifact. A piece of my history offered without strings. I typed a reply. "Thank you. I'll treasure it." And I would. Not as a symbol of a family I needed to win over, but as a memory of a woman who had loved me for who I was, and who had, in her own way, given me the first tools to build this life. I got into the waiting car, heading toward my office, my city, my future. The past was finally completely where it belonged. Not forgotten but finished. And the road ahead was wide open, drenched in sunlight.